in with that big band that is now coming through. And here's the timing of that. That coming into Charleston, 2 o'clock in the morning or so. It's going to be very heavy overnight, 2 to 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. Columbia getting hit hard, Charlotte getting in on the rain. Watch Raleigh here, 9 o'clock in the morning. It's starting to rain. It continues to rain all day long. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, still coming down very heavily. Even late afternoon, we're still getting more rain in Raleigh. And then all this comes up and into Tidewater, Virginia, and eventually makes its way towards the Delmarva as well. We're going to talk more about the northeast impacts coming up here in just a few minutes. Mark, over to you.
But, one of the dangers that we often see with hurricanes and tropical storms when they come towards land are tornadoes. And this tornado in particular was very impressive today, partially because of the size here. You don't often see the classic wedge tornado from a tropical system. But Carl, we also saw it very clearly using the technology, right? The Doppler radar couplet was strong. The debris signature when this was in progress was strong. That's also reasonably rare from tropical tornadoes, which often are more just a general wind shift, and it's enough to get them going.
Yeah, I mean, that looks to be a pretty strong tornado. It's going to be very interesting to see what the EF rating is in this case, but it is a large tornado, certainly, but also still illustrates, part of what makes these tornadoes and tropical systems so dangerous. In the southeast, you've got a lot of tree cover. You tend to have very low cloud bases, and there's a lot of moisture in the air, and so all of that serves to make it all sort of amorphous. I mean, there are moments here we can very clearly see that V shape, but then when it starts to get beyond the trees, it's a little bit harder to tell, exactly what you're looking at, especially to an untrained eye. But, people do report hearing a whooshing sound, or, the freight train is very common. It's funny because there are a lot of eyewitness reports from people who see tornadoes for the first time, and they say they intuitively knew that it was a tornado, even though they had never heard anything like that in their lives. They knew that it was a tornado just because it was so strange. It was so outside of their experience.
And another view of that same storm, and Carl brought up a good point. While we have a decent view of this funnel right now, it was almost immediately rain wrapped. It almost immediately brought all that rain around the circulation. And so for a while, there were reports of damage continuing with nobody seeing it at that point because it was just such heavy rain.
Yeah, so many times these things are going to be rain wrapped. And, there's an example. It's almost, it's really difficult to kind of pick out where it is right there. There's definitely a darkness off in the distance, but where exactly is that tornado? And so, that's the visibility issue that, extends beyond just tropical systems, but is a problem in the Southeast in general, which is why we say the Southeast has a very high societal vulnerability to tornadoes, much more so than the plains.
If the video didn't start here and started towards when the tornado was on the right side of the screen, you'd have no idea that was a tornado moving across the landscape. One of those possible tornadoes blamed for the first Elsa-related death in the U.S. The strong winds knocked down a tree in Jacksonville this afternoon that fell on 2 cars and killed 1 person. Meteorologist Ted Wooten is in Jacksonville with more on the damage there.
Well, as Elsa pulls out, we've been left with a slew of damage across the county. I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten in Duval County, Florida. Downtown Jacksonville right behind me, and so is the St. Johns River, which is much calmer than it was earlier today. We picked up close to 2.5 inches of rainfall. Still a little bit more to go as we go throughout the evening hours today. And speaking of earlier today, what did we see from Tropical Storm Elsa? Anytime you get a hurricane or a tropical storm even, you always get strong feeder bands or outer rainfall bands that not only produce heavy rainfall, but produce strong squalls of winds as well. We've seen winds between 40 and 50 miles per hour, and look at what it did in terms of damage. Right around 3 o'clock, when the first squall came through, we actually saw trees come down in one neighborhood near Roosevelt Boulevard. Unfortunately, that tree fell on 2 cars, and 1 person died as a result of that tree falling down. And then around the 5 o'clock hour came the second squall line. This was much stronger, contained winds between 40 and 55 miles per hour for some of the strongest gusts, and also a tornado warning storm at that continued from through Cove and points towards the north and northeast into southeastern Georgia. Out of that tornado warning storm, yes, we saw damaging winds, we saw heavy rainfall. We also saw trees that came down near University Boulevard and portions of I-95. The trees came down, sightings strewn about as well throughout several apartment complexes, and even some roofing too. That's just several different sites that we saw throughout portions of northeastern Florida and Jacksonville. First responders and the Jacksonville Fire and Rescue Department still urging residents to stay where they are. Don't necessarily try to get out right now because they've got to clear the debris off the roadway such that things will be easier to pass into tonight and tomorrow. That's the latest here from Jacksonville. I'm meteorologist Tevin Wooten, the Weather Channel.
Thanks, Tevin. And Tevin mentioned that storm that crossover into Georgia. We've got some new information about a suspected tornado that touched down at the Naval Submarine Base, Kings Bay. That's in Georgia. Reports of multiple injuries, and many taken to medical facilities for treatment. Several RVs in the RV park on the base were damaged. Also reports of damage to buildings on the installation. The tornado, part of the tropical storm Elsa, as it moved through the area, which is often the case. Tropical systems often spawn tornadoes. So this is a tornado that is tied to Tropical Storm Elsa. Without Elsa, that tornado wouldn't have been there. Now, we continue to have a tornado threat tonight. Tornado watch continues overnight until 5 a.m. It's been trimmed back a bit. We've cut off a couple of the counties here as the position of the low has moved north. The rotation component of the wind profile in the atmosphere has moved north along with it, but we're still looking at a healthy amount of counties here, coastal Georgia up through coastal South Carolina, with a tornado watch until 5 a.m. Here's a look at that wind profile. Now, the worst of the wind shift is going to be in this area, where right now, winds at the surface are coming up like this and then bending their way back towards the area of low pressure. That low is centered right in here. That's our center of our low pressure area. So those blue lines are the surface winds, while aloft, we suddenly have winds coming up out of the south, as opposed to more easterly in that area. And that is enough of a spin to give us at least a chance for a couple of storms, which is why we've got this red zone and the chance of a tornado. It's a 3 out of 10 on the Torcon, Carl, so at least a chance of some spin-up tornadoes here.
Yeah, we continue to look at the possibility of some flash flooding with this storm. We've had some flash flood warnings through the day today, some of them with a considerable threat tag indicating a life-threatening flash flooding situation. That was the case earlier today in Georgia. That is a live look at Sullivan's Island in South Carolina, where the rain really started to come down, and we could get some rainfall rates of 1 to 2 to 3 inches per hour in some of these heavier bands. So there's a look at the rainfall to come, and you're talking about 2 to 3 inches there across parts of South Carolina and North Carolina going into tomorrow. The flash flood threat is going to be greatest really here in South Carolina as it's now beginning to wind down in Georgia. And we can show you the model forecast and show you how this is going to play out. So, there you go into 2 o'clock in the morning, the heaviest of rain anywhere from, say, Edisto up into Charleston, coming into Columbia as well. 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning starts to move away from Charleston, coming into Myrtle Beach, raining heavily in Columbia, South Carolina, even reaching all the way up into Greenville. Then 9 o'clock in the morning, Cape Fear and Wilmington, Myrtle Beach still getting the heavy rain. The rain's coming up into Raleigh as well. It's going to rain for most of the day tomorrow in Raleigh as well as into Charlotte. Really coming down there in the Triangle, 1 p.m. Plenty of heavy rain and thunderstorms along the Sounds and the Outer Banks. And the rain finally begins to move out of Raleigh late in the afternoon and comes up into South Central Virginia, up into Richmond and into Danville as we go into the dinner hour. So a lot of wet weather on the way and a flash flood threat across the Carolinas along with that. Mark, over to you.
And we're then going to follow this into the Northeast corridor, because the Northeast is going to see some significant rains on the way from Elsa. On top of the rains you've been seeing over the past couple of days, and we'll see through tomorrow, leading, well out ahead of Elsa's rain. D.C., New York, both included in those areas that could see rain because of the tropics. Unbelievable, right? That we're still going to be talking about Elsa all the way up the New England coastline. Here's a look at that, latter part of the track. getting through the Atlantic City area and up towards New York City by sometime Friday, early in the day, Friday morning. By Friday evening, coastal Maine, and then finally saying goodbye through Southeast Canada and into the Canadian Maritimes as we start off the weekend. And you know what? Good riddance, because we've been tracking this name for what feels like forever at this point. Now, we have a tropical storm position that's going to be crucial, because it's close enough to the coast, whether the center is right on the shore or just off the shore or a little bit inland. At that point, it doesn't really matter much, because it's going to be close enough. We're going to see this real long fetch of tropical moisture pointed right back into New England. There's going to be a front that's going to be sweeping this away, so the forward speed is going to be increasing, and that's why this thing goes barreling through the northeast. But not fast enough, and that low not far enough east to protect the East Coast from getting any of that tropical rain. So here's a look at the Atlantic City area. You'll see the showers and storms starting to pop up Thursday evening, but it's really overnight leading into Friday with the heavy rain that comes through southern portions of the Jersey Shore. I want to also show you the New York City forecast, because here in New York, look at this. Northern suburbs are going to see a couple of rounds of big storms, not only tonight, but then again tomorrow night. And that's before Elsa. We have all that rain approaching from the south, leading into your Friday morning commute time. It is going to be pouring Friday morning in the Big Apple. So stay with the Weather Channel and continue to tune in as we track Elsa up the East Coast. Live reports and expert analysis you can't get anywhere else.